if placebos have these true physical effects, if these kinds of treatments are changing the amount of dopamine in your brain and changing the amount of serotonin in your brain and having observable physical effects, it does raise a question, what is the difference between a placebo and true medicine? Where does that line lie?
It's a really good question. And especially when you talk about, let me think here. Any kind of alternative medicine that where there may be an effect, like a lot of traditional Chinese medicine. A lot of that stuff, like ginseng, I'm pretty sure doesn't relies pretty much on the placebo effect only. But then you look at something like artemisinin, which is a really important malaria treatment now. Like that won a Nobel Prize for that research. That's a piece of Chinese medicine that was doing something. Now there's a lot of stuff in between where it may be doing something, but it's just not doing as much as the placebo effect is, right? So you can't see that. Like if it's placebo effect is more effective than whatever the herb is that you're playing with, you won't be able to know that it's actually treating 30% if the placebo effect is 40%. And so that's where that question really gets interesting. And the other place is placebo effects have for a long time been considered temporary. And it's one of the characteristics of a placebo effect, is that it's a temporary effect. And the question has arisen lately whether or not there are placebo effects that are permanent. Mm-hmm. Whether or not you can reprogram the brain, sort of re-twiddle the knobs that control how much endogenous opioids your brain is using and producing. Yeah. And if that happens, and I talk about some interesting cases along those lines. Well, that's healing. That's a cure. That is medicine. That's what it's doing. And at that point, you're talking about real relief to people. And if you talk to pain doctors, this is they get it. This is something because they have a hard time treating chronic pain. Yeah. This is something that it is medicine. It's just coming from your head.
You point to this one case that's particularly striking. This patient who had Parkinson's. And went through this trial surgery, his trial treatment, which turned out not to be effective or not to.
It didn't beat the placebo effect.
Right, yeah. It didn't beat the placebo effect. Yeah. And he learns this, and during the testing period, he had this huge improvement in his life. Was able to, it really changed his life.
I think he ran a partial marathon and went heli skiing. Yeah. This is a guy who was having trouble walking, and now he's getting out of a helicopter and skiing down a mountain. Yeah. Life changing is putting it mildly.
Yeah, and then he finds out it's a placebo, or it didn't outperform the placebo.
Right.
And yet the benefits continue, and that's where we get to your point that maybe there is a possibility that some of these have lasting effects where they kind of retrain the brain in some sense.
In his case, it was actually a surgery. It was injecting this drug deep into his brain, and but because Parkinson's is so placebo responsive, in fact, it's really can be really difficult to treat because of the high placebo rate. They have to compare it against a sham surgery, which is basically where they just drill a little divot into your skull, but then they don't do anything else. Like it makes it feel like something happened to your skull. And because of the people who responded to the placebo response in this trial, because it was so high, this treatment that was being tested failed, and that company actually went out of business. But they got purchased and disappeared. And it was crushing for the doctor who was this patient's doctor, until she realized, she unblinded it, and they realized that this patient had been one of those placebo responders. Like he was skiing down a mountain after getting a placebo surgery. Like it's insane. And this was like a 2-year long. This is the thing that they made this study really long, probably one of the longest recorded placebo responses ever from this particular study, because it was like 2 years. And really, Parkinson's doesn't get better. You can slow the progress, medically, but you can't actually make it you can't make it go down, and yet this seemed to happen. And so you do have this question of, it's not permanent because, Parkinson's is, it's a degenerative disease, but in case of chronic pain and other things, you can get these similar things that happen that are permanent. And this certainly, in his case, like, it's life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no drug could ever hope to have that kind of a success rate in Parkinson's. So then what is, like you said, what is medicine? You're self-medicating is what the best explanation would be, is that you are tapping into your brain's ancient internal pharmacy, the pharmacy inside your own head.